So I'm Zandi Dandizette with Becca Tobin. Is that how
Tobin,
we say it?
yes.
Perfect. For VanCAF's sort of like online new setup for this year with everything going on. Can you go ahead and let me know like how have you been doing during this?
I think I've been doing all right, all things considered. It's definitely I'm sure everyone feels the same way. It's a very weird time. My day job, I work from home, so I've been doing like trying to do like painting and art stuff as well through it. Yeah, I'm pretty lucky. I have a balcony and stuff like that, like we were talking about. So I have not been too confined, and yeah, compared to Britain, where I'm from, everything here is the lockdowns are a little bit more gentle. So I feel pretty
Good.
lucky, I guess, so far. But yeah, so far so good.
And didn't you say you were like moving workspaces or something like that right
Yeah, well, I'm about to move apartments, so yeah, I have found a place to live, which is great. A real was like always going to be the case that my sublet would end this month, but obviously that was like, wow, it'll be totally fine and so easy, and then everything kicked off, and it was a little bit more difficult. But thankfully, but yeah, that's my big change this month, which will be kind of
now?
crazy.
Oh gosh. Well, at least you'll have like more time to settle in when you're
Totally,
um,
yes.
moving spaces.
Mm.
You're also relatively new to Vancouver. What brought you here?
I've been thinking about moving to Canada to see what it was like for a little bit. I've been over here a few times for TCAF and for VanCAF as well.
Oh, okay.
So I had like a good experience of the city and sort of wanted to try something new. And there is a visa program that if you're part of like the Commonwealth, it's fairly easy to like get over here and like work for a few years. So yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment. Yeah, I'm just doing like admin work and then doing comics and painting basically on the side most of the rest of the time.
That's beautiful. It sounds like you already had a connection to the comics community here.
Yeah, exactly. And it's been a super welcoming city. I mean, it's beautiful as well. Like this time of year, especially, it's just like blows my mind. I like go outside and plants everywhere and the mountains. Yeah, it's a very, I feel like I've been here about 6 months, but I'm still definitely like, kind of like, oh my God, like every time I see the mountains makes me excited. So yeah, it's been really, really nice. It's been a good place to settle in for sure.
Yeah, summer is also incredible here, so that's fair.
Yeah, I'm excited. Even though it's like obviously a weird summer, I'm still like hyped to, sit outside, like see the ocean and stuff. It's very nice.
Beautiful. So I know, unfortunately, with the pandemic kind of thing, your show that was supposed to show at the James Black Gallery, which I'm sort of like, I'm the person who runs it.
Mhm.
Maybe I didn't introduce myself. I'm Zandi Dandizette. But the show is called Being Alive.
Yes.
And I still hope that maybe once things have shifted, we can see plans for it in the future.
Yeah, I love
Uh,
that.
I saw some snippets of your work that you were making for the show,
Hmm.
and some of it seemed either like a new process for you.
Yeah, I've definitely like been pushing, especially for like a gallery show. Like a lot of this work I do has been because it's sort of confined to yes, this is my website so that you can see here. Yeah, it's usually I've been thinking a lot about like storing it, not necessarily showing it very much, to in sort of like a physical form, and yeah, working more with sort of 3D stuff. So yeah, like this piece here is on a big block of wood. I've been sort of trying out a bunch of different like painting on wood and like incorporating like sculptural elements, which I've been doing a little bit through my work already.
Mm.
Yeah, so this one,
Oh, I love
this
that.
little like keychain is sort of the last few years I've been making a lot of like keychains and earrings and like experimenting with resin and stuff, to sort of see what like 3D kind of elements I can bring into my work. And I really enjoy working in a more like three-dimensional space. So yeah, I've been messing around a lot with wood and with um, resin and polymer clay and stuff, with like these the stuff
Hi.
for the show. Yeah, this is so these are sort of key rings that I made last year. Um,
Amazing.
And yeah, it was just really fun. I made like a bunch of shapes, and when I'm making these, I'm kind of just going, like, I don't really have much of a plan of what they'll look like when I'm like making them out of the clay.
Mm-hmm.
And then make a bunch of shapes that I think look kind of nice, and then only like after they're baked and like ready to paint do I start thinking about like, oh, is this gonna have like a face here, or is it gonna be like a flower, or like a weird little, like, you know, sort of like, I feel like a lot of the work I make in these is like super organic, and it's a super fun process because I'm not confined by anything. I'll just paint straight onto them and have fun making them. And then I get to cover them in resin, and they're all like, they feel really good. It's really strange to say, but I love how nice they feel. I always end up trying to encourage, obviously can't do this anymore because of there's a pandemic, but like I encourage people to touch them when I'm at shows and stuff, because I think they feel really good. They're such a nice tactile experience.
The shape informs the, you know, the characterization or like what
For
comes out of
sure,
it, right?
yeah, definitely. And yeah, in my comics and my art, I do a lot of like little blobby people and sort of kind of more not really like human shapes a lot of the time, or like super cartoony human shapes, and I like abstracting like bodies down to just little blobs. So I feel like this kind of stuff, and like working in a more like, yeah, like I guess these like this crying cat or whatever, like those stickers and stuff like that is kind of very much like that, where I wanted to have like, I'm more interested in the shapes than I am it necessarily making sense as a like as a body and a form. Yeah, so it sort of feels like working with clay even with my 2D stuff in a lot of my work, I think.
Yeah, there's actually a clay studio at the JBG, and I think one of the main reasons people get into sculptural work is that tactility, right?
Totally, yeah.
To be able to, I don't know, there's a more physical presence, obviously, to it,
Of
and
course, yeah.
that's super neat. Is there a specific reason that you find yourself more prone to like these like blobby shapes with the bodies, or like abstraction?
I think it's feel like there are like a few reasons. Like I quite when I'm writing stories and comics especially, I feel like all my characters are inherently kind of a bit genderless and like sort of like in a genderless sort of non-binary space, I guess. And I'm a non-binary person as well, so like that's sort of like where that informs, like I'm like, oh, I don't necessarily want them to look specifically like they are like a guy or a girl, and like sometimes I often, if I'm writing a comic, I don't really know like what they'd be, or like, you know, if they're aliens or blobs, then you can kind of have that like fluidity of like form and personality that for me is a really interesting thing to explore. And I think you can explore that through abstracting sort of the bodies of the characters, and like, yeah, you can make them cute or like horrible, or, you know, sort of just like not necessarily be bound to any specific formal rules, which is nice.
So you're finding that like your queerness informs your work
For sure, yeah. And I think it sort of informed it even before I really understood how it was informing it as well. Like I feel like it was a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff where I was like, oh, I was exploring this without kind of really knowing that was sort of where it was going, or like why I was sort of wanting to explore and form that. So yeah, it's sort of, I feel like art and life like to go together a lot of the time, and become useful tools for one another, I think. And yeah,
I feel like I'm going to show you my work after this as also a non-binary individual, and we've done it in entirely different ways, but I see that same sort of mentality of like trying to distill the humanoid, or like, you know, a characterization, emotions, and people without having to like push all these like monikers on the characters, right?
Totally, yeah. And I feel like it's fun to just sort of do that and have people, I feel, especially like the work on the screen now, like quite a lot of it is just like you're kind of having a chill, like a nice time, or like a weird time, but like, I don't know, at rest. I feel like there's a lot of like restfulness in a lot of my pieces, of like push through. Do
you find there are specific themes that you have popped up more earlier on versus now? Like,
yeah, I think earlier, maybe because I was a sadder person, I drew a lot more crying people than maybe I do now. I think I was a lot more like, oh, I gotta really, you know, dealing with a lot of shit in my own life or whatever. So it was a lot of like, I feel, yeah, when I was younger, it was definitely a lot more maybe like aggression and like sadness and stuff that I was trying to deal with, as opposed to now I feel like maybe it's, I mean, I still do that. I still like to put like big feelings into my work, but yeah, I definitely think that maybe now I think my people are kind of like, I feel like I'm more pushing into making work about like connection and stuff rather than like,
Oh, beautiful.
like baby me being sad and being like, I'm gonna draw a like sad cat or whatever and have everyone cry all the time. Like, but I think drawing people crying is really fun.
Well, it's the variety of emotion.
Tears and like, oh yeah, you can make people like really like goofy. It's a goofy emotion as well to in lots of ways, even when it's very serious. It's gonna be like,
yeah,
like,
I mean,
body is doing its own thing, and you're like, okay.
I see a lot of like tenderness with the treatment of your characters, even when you're like dipping your toes into the tougher subject matter or like internal anxieties.
Yeah.
Do you find that maybe that softness is, I don't know, when I was looking at it, I was like, is that you, it's like you're like caring for the people who are going through the things. Like, you're like, I'm sorry that you're experiencing this, but I'm really glad that you're like living your life.
I think that is definitely something that I consider. Like, I feel like I don't know, it's like a kind of some sort of compassion for my characters, even when things are kind of weird or bad or like stressful. Like, I don't know, I feel like, I guess because like writing and drawing stories is like part of your own projection of self, and like something about the practice of then extending compassion to characters who are like being idiots or like doing weird stuff or like in like weird chaos zones in like a story where it's like, I don't know, I think it's still, there is a way to like write those things while still I guess having an inherent compassion, but maybe for them.
I could say like not all comics end up being that way, right? So
for sure. And I mean, to be, like, I also think like sometimes I really enjoy reading something where you're like, oh, it's very unforgiving, and there's, you know, a real like, it's like, oh, this is like intense and stressful, and like like I feel like that maybe that is like content I enjoy to consume more than I enjoy creating myself. I think I would find it, I don't know, I like horror movies and shit like that, which are usually intense and horrible. But I feel like my work, I feel like channels that in a different way, I guess.
Well, and also I don't know, when I was looking at was it sort of like a diary piece about London and like your experience in London?
Mm-hmm.
There's like an anger and a frustration of like transits and then men wearing suits and like these feelings of like heaviness towards that, right? So there's still these like sort of like outlash moments, but they're,
oh my god, yeah, for sure. I feel like that collection, I bought it out in December, I believe, and it was just a collection of like, over the 3 years I lived in London, like a bunch of different comics I made, and like a lot of them, like public transit, like London's I love London a lot, but it's an intense city and like very big and like a lot of stuff going on all the time, and it's a very, you have a lot of, I feel like everyone has extreme emotions all the time. It's like a real like,
while you're there.
Definitely, it's like a real boiling pot full of,
maybe I don't have it up. There it is.
This one, and it's sort of, I mean, it's weird as well looking back on these comics, because I went through like 4 different jobs in London, and like there were times where I was like, you know, like shitty bosses and like weird medical stuff, and dealing with taking the transit everywhere and it being horrible and very crowded.
I love this imagery right here.
These are some trains in love, like
all over the place.
It's just all over the place, and like people are like mad because they can't get on the train. How I felt a lot. This is my opinions on various buildings in London, and just lots of different bits. This is this one I did when I was working for a really weird, shady cafe / Airbnb rental place. It was horrible.
Dear.
It was really horrible. was horrible. Yeah, so there's lots of I feel like this was a super intense comic. Like looking back on it, I'm like, oh boy, like just seeing like a bunch of years condensed and seeing all the different emotions that I went through in all those
Totally.
times. I feel like my autobio stuff is probably where I get more into, like, I guess the more, I don't want to be like the more real stuff, because it all is like real, like real emotions and real stuff. But yeah, I feel like there are lots of ones where I just need to kind of like cathartically get out. And a lot of these ones I'm just drawing straight into my sketchbook as well. So there's not a lot of like thought. It's kind of like, oh, I'm going to draw like something about today, or like, just draw my like bedroom or whatever. And I do a lot of that kind of stuff in sketchbook mostly.
There's a lot of real experience. Like when
Mm-hmm.
you're able to share something you've experienced, it allows it to be, I don't know, I feel more easily translatable, right? It's like
Right. Yeah.
you know that emotion deeply, or that
Yes.
experience. For folks who haven't really heard of you before, can you maybe tell us a little bit about like some of your influence that you find in your work, like things that you've, I don't know, we all have things that
Mm-hmm.
like
Totally.
inspire us, right?
Yeah. I feel like um, I generally pick up influence from like a lot of different like sort of sources. Like I like read a bunch of comics, but also I get like really inspired by like the world around me or whatever. Like, going outside and like seeing weird, like I did a zine, like this zine is one that I did about my obsession with a certain like brand of like chicken shops in London that all have like the same logo, and it's this chicken that's like it's called Perfect Chicken, the franchise, and it's like
I
it's a
just can't
really
even with this one.
it's a really arresting image of a chicken. And
Yeah.
they're all around my neighborhood, and so many of the chickens are slightly different from each other. Like they've all been drawn, even though it's the same face, they look very different, but like it's all the same. I don't know, and it's just something about it, like stuff like that, I think is probably the stuff that that really truly draws me in a way that like maybe like media doesn't in the same way, like, or like I don't know, it's like like the media of the outside world. Like I've been really enjoying living here, seeing 7-Eleven shops. I think
Oh.
they're really beautiful. Like they look really nice. I know it sounds insane, but like when you're like walking down the road and you see like one all lit up, I'm like, we do not have them in the UK. So they are like there's something just very pleasant and special about them, and like stuff like that, and like iconography, I guess, as well.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of like, quasi like like this chicken sort of like a weird Catholic deity. Like I don't know, family is Catholic, and a lot of that I think informed a lot of my probably like my child brain, like a lot of that kind of art and the super like a lot of symbolism that like translates and goes through like so many like hundreds of years of like stuff that you can kind of figure out. And I
Yeah.
think I feel like that tends to be my biggest influences, is more like stuff that I see and then kind of get like a hook in my brain with it, and I'm just like, oh, I can't stop thinking about this, and like I do.
I mean, I pretty much like squealed internally about it. There is such a thoughtfulness about like the simple things that maybe a lot
Mm.
of people don't pay attention to, the like daily mundane. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that is definitely something I think about a lot. And just seeing like, I don't know, to me it is kind of like almost like a folk art style thing where you see stuff where it's like some person has you know um taken the time to like paint this like mascot for like a dentist or something like that, where it's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's like maybe just like a guy, like, well, maybe they hire someone, like, but like it's like all this kind of this art that is every day around us,
Mm-hmm.
and whether or not it was made in sort of a like very haphazard way, sometimes it can be super beautiful and interesting. And I also think I like nature, which is another thing you see all the time, and like the outdoors and plants and um just hanging out in the dirt, like.
My partner yesterday was actually like so enthusiastic about hanging out in the dirt. Literally
Oh
had
yeah.
his like
Oh
shoes off,
yeah,
like
nice.
just shorts, completely just like in the mud.
Yes. Oh.
So almost like animalistic
Yeah, something
quality
very
to it.
pleasant about it. Like, yeah, even I was saying before we started recording about growing tomatoes and growing fruit and vegetables, and yeah, just getting to repot like a plant or something, and you know, like sticking your hand in a bunch of dirt and like moving the plant, like interacting in such a visceral way is something that feels very special. It's like a thing that you don't usually get to do. Like most of the time, you're not like encouraged, or like you don't have a reason to like get that up close and personal with like plants. And yeah, super cool to be able to do that.
Well, and it's our food resource
Of
and
course.
our connection to the earth.
For
And
sure.
I myself don't have a green thumb. I don't know what to do with it, but by this sort of like forced, being more still
Yes.
basis, it is a way that I've been able to sort of reconnect the community element of the JBG, because people can individually spend time in the gardening area
That's really cool.
and distant from each other, or like one person in the back and one person in the front. Just getting access to, I don't know, the green areas that maybe I myself am not doing the best at appreciating. And so it's neat to be able to see different ways that we can still connect to each other. One thing I just thought about when you were talking about like iconography, you were also referencing like brands, and it's like you're
Yeah.
like reconnecting imagery of brands that are now, doing a lot of like maybe moralistic speaking for us. And then the
Totally. Oh
past,
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
intriguing.
It is. I mean, it is funny, isn't it? Like I feel like a lot of like brands, especially now, there's a whole marketability on being, I guess woke, or like whatever the corporate version of that is, of like being like, we love women or whatever, the feminism, and or like just all this kind of stuff where it's like, oh, trying to hit on something, but like kind of not like committing to it because they don't want to be too radical because it's their brand. But yeah, a very I do sometimes wonder about that. It's like super strong images and like very specific symbols that brands want you to associate, especially I think in the last few years there's been like such a big push of like people are consuming in a way where I think people are often more mindful of like when a brand is like completely horrible and terrible, like Amazon or whatever, like people are going to be, so yeah, you're having this sort of weird renaissance of like, no, we're good, and like, this brand is also tied with like a goodness, or like, you're thinking more, you're caring for the planet, or whatever thing. And yeah, I think there is kind of a link between secular iconography of like the corporate world and yeah, like the more religious stuff, not to get too crazy with it, but I definitely think there is something very similar about those things, and definitely the visual languages of
of
religion
without a doubt.
and with corporate entities feels very a similar kind of thing, similar.
I myself, coming from like an animation background, have been like deep diving animated films lately.
Oh, cool.
3D films. So like even navigating watching something like WALL-E,
oh yeah,
which literally like portrays this future dystopia of just like brand takeover and losing identity in a way, and then also seeing something like Wreck-It Ralph that has like such a delicious message, and almost like giving safe space for masculinity to express insecurities, and then also recognize what insecurities are, and like not ownership of your friends, but then it's also like hidden amongst the meaning of just like Disney tells you this, like look at the princesses, and
totally.
look, we can retweak our message of the princesses by like giving a little more feminist appeal in this like side brand that isn't associated with our big brand. Like it's very intriguing how they're like rewriting their stories, or like trying to meet a more modern perspective.
For sure. Yeah, it's very interesting. I like it. It makes me it makes me uncomfortable, but also I'm like, it's like fascinating to see. It's like a very strange thing, and like a lot of it is just like my instincts of like, I don't really like being advertised to, and I don't like the sort of that like pandering corporations. So I'm always very suspicious when. But yeah, so it's weird as well because you still have people, especially in like animation and films and stuff, and television, still trying to tell interesting and like cool stories. Even within, I mean, to be honest, it's like what we're all doing with like stuff like Instagram. We are like we're like mediated by corporations, but trying to still post moving and beautiful work, and having to like balance those things of wanting to share and to interact, but
And they have power too, right?
Totally.
I saw that, like, I saw a snippet of like who you've had as like clients and stuff like that, and I saw, me being from my background, I was like, oh, Cartoon Network. What did you end up doing with them?
I was working on Summer Camp Island. I did title card for one of the episodes for them, and I think it's on my website as well. And yeah, it was really a very pleasant experience. I haven't had a lot of animation experience. I've done a few like storyboard tests and bits and pieces like here and there, but that was like super cool to like be able to create a painting for a show. Was really fun. And it's a really beautiful show with lots of cool people working on it. So it was like, I don't know, that's always nice to be able to collaborate in a way with something like that.
You have some cute little gifts
Yeah.
on here. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
I just recently animated for the first time in several years. It's like I've gotten so embedded in like the admin elements of like art.
Yeah, for sure.
There's just something so magical about like reworking and connecting to like where that creature could go or be, right? Like this little like popping out
like baby. Yeah. I feel like I got an iPad a year or so ago, and it has very Procreate or whatever has a really good like I'm not much of it. I don't feel like I've never learned any like formal animation stuff. So it's a really fun way of like playing around with like how do I make things move, and like how do I it's such a good tool to make GIFs and stuff. And yeah, it's just fun making like little like icons and stuff, and like just super simple like fun animations. I really like the mum and the baby one. I think I like a baby in a pouch or like inside a mother.
That's super lovely. Well, and also like for me, like animation or GIFs and such, it's like you get to capture like a full like snippet of emotion in such a particular full way. I also wanted to make comment on like your color palette. Obviously, I'm a color-oriented individual, and even in your like two-tone palettes, they play very nicely together. Were you always drawn to bright colors in your creative process, or is that a newer thing that's formatted?
I think generally, yes. I would say I've always been into bright colors. I've been always quite interested in making, especially like I've pretty much always worked with like watercolor as like a really sort of strong base, and I love trying to make like watercolor stuff bright. I feel like usually like I think now is a bit different, but like watercolor painting traditionally is thought of as quite like a washy kind of not loads of colorful things. And I really like to mess around, and I just like having fun with colors. Like I feel like I've don't really understand color theory. I really enjoy just putting colors together how they feel good for me. Like digital art, like this kind of stuff has been really interesting for me because it's a very different, like the fact that colors look different on different screens and stuff is something that I'm still very much like starting to like get a handle on and like navigate and like work it out. Like it's like, oh, sometimes I'll draw something on my iPad and then like post it and be like, oh, it looks so muddy, like I didn't want it to I wanted it to look brighter or whatever. But I really enjoy using a bunch of different colors. Some friends got me some like fluorescent watercolor palettes over, I think it was like in December sort of time, and they've been super fun. They do not capture very well on scan because they're super fluorescent, but they look so beautiful in real life, and it's really fun to get like really bright pink watercolor and stuff. It's great.
I think when we're doing sort of like, in a world where you can show so much online and
Mm-hmm.
curate the presentation and
Mm.
such, um, the fact that there is certain things that you can only see in person, like you said, like the
Mm.
colors in that type of work or medium, um, showcase better in person. It's like there's a reason to experience it, right? A reason
Yeah,
to
I think so.
go in person, or like the tactility of like, the objects that you've been making and being able to
Mm.
feel them, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a question I ask myself when I like want to put on shows, not even like my own work or
Mm-hmm.
curating other people's work, is like, why would we see this in person versus online?
Right.
What is it about seeing the object alone on a wall or with multiple objects, or being able to touch or feel it? And so I think that's really kind of like a neat thing that maybe you're developing or playing with in the
Definitely.
next bit here. So we all have our personal canon. When I've been like going through your work,
Mm.
obviously I'm going to like relate things to other artists or things that I know.
Totally.
I myself saw similarities with uh, like like Ben Montero's sketchbooks.
Mm-hmm.
Stylistically, do you feel like do you know of them, and like have you feel like you're touching on similar topics?
I feel like I know of like their work. I don't know their stuff super well, so I
Mhm.
wouldn't like be able to. But I definitely feel like I can see the like the
Resemblance.
the resemblance for sure. And I think they are exploring similar topics to me. And yeah, it's definitely. I feel like canon wise, I think I'm always inspired by like Linda Barry's work. I think has been a big influence on me for like many years now. Because she does, I think she is another cartoonist who does like so much sort of work with like playing around with different things, and I really admire her like ethos of like anyone can be a cartoonist and draw and have fun, and it doesn't need to be super serious and super
Yeah.
like it can still have a lot of really good stuff, like fun stuff, and it doesn't need to be super formal, and you need to read the understanding cartoon book or whatever it is. I can't remember what it's called, but that book
Yeah.
that everyone reads. I mean, not to say it's bad. I have not read it, but so it's probably a good book. But yeah.
I mean, so I suppose, like, so for example, for me, there are artists where like I almost kind of like eye roll because people bring it up so many times, or they're like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, your work is so surreal, and you're just like, oh, that's not what I want to hear. But I appreciate it is your like personal references. Is there
Totally.
stuff that you get told quite a bit, or like,
It's
or
interesting. I feel like for a while when like Adventure Time was big, there was a lot of people being like, wow, it's just like Adventure Time, which is like strange because I'm like, I don't think that's not, but I guess kind of
yeah,
again colorful, like sort of like blobby people.
yeah.
I can see the like the resemblance of like that kind of stuff. I feel like that was always a big one with Adventure Time. Just trying to think like
Isn't that
what.
funny?
Yeah, it's so hilarious. I feel like that is always like the big one. I'm always interested to see. I feel like I draw a lot of cute stuff, but also my
Mhm.
work's kind of gross as well. And I'm always fascinated to see whether people like kind of hook onto either, oh, so cute, or like, ooh, like, and sometimes people
Yeah.
are kind of like both. Like when I do shows or whatever, I feel like you get to see people's reactions in real time to work, which is
Oh,
always kind
that's
of fun.
lovely. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like fun. It's a little bit like daunting because you're like, here is my soul that I'm showing you in like book form or whatever. But it's like really interesting to see what people pick up from work, and whether people do think it's cute or like kind of disgusting or like nice or
Yeah.
whatever thing, or just don't get it. Like sometimes people just like, I don't understand it, and I'm like, okay. Which was fine. I don't really mind, but it's really funny when someone says that to you in person. It's really fascinating.
Yeah,
Like,
I
wow,
mean,
damn,
it's
hey,
all based on our backgrounds
for
and
real, yeah.
what we've also mediatized or
Mm,
like taken in, right? Um, Something I saw that I thought was really cute, and when you were talking about like calmness,
mm.
much earlier in this, is in your online description for understanding, there's like recommended places to read the book:
Oh
on a
yes.
beach, in your bed, anywhere it's too cold, on a plane, in a bath. It like sets this tone. Can you tell me more about like what inspired this series of musings, or like a
Oh,
little bit
interesting.
that's in the book that like for people who might be interested in
Mm-hmm.
like checking it out?
Yeah, the book is a collection of a bunch of work from a few, like I think it was a span of about 3 years probably. So it's a bunch of like short stories, and a couple of paintings and stuff interspersed in between. I feel like there are quite a lot of like party themed comics in that, where like people are at parties and like hanging out, and yeah, like I feel like it is a kind of, it was it sort of felt like it was a real way to like wrap up that like period of work I was making. Like it was I did a story in that book about, yeah, it's like a bunch of blobs like hanging out and their lives, and one of the characters disappearing, and like what, you know, what that kind of what meant and stuff. And it was all like that specific when I was drawing like day after day on a lunch break from a job. It's called lunchtime because of that. And yeah, I feel like there's a lot of like, was I guess a time where I was like working a bunch of shit out, and like, yeah, in very weird precarious situations, and like lots of, yeah, I moved a bunch in like that sort of time making that, and like did a bit of couch surfing, and it's just kind of like sort of a lot of big feelings about like life and friendship, and you know, and yeah, and also understanding like my own queerness and stuff like that, which I feel like comes through. Yeah, but yeah, I feel like overall it's a like bunch of guys trying to like live life in a cool, fun way with each other.
Whether for the best or not.
Yeah, exactly. And like lots of, yeah, weird short stories are sort of about like that as a loose theme, I would say, which I feel like is a loose theme. At the moment I'm working on some comics about aliens living on a spaceship, that sort of sci-fi comic that will be out at some point in the future.
Amazing.
I don't know whether I'm allowed to announce it, but at some point it will be
it's a little snippet.
Yeah, a little snippet. Yeah, it's been sort of fun because I feel like it draws on those on sort of the similar vibes, but I feel like it's maybe more like fictional. I feel like it's a lot more like sort of trying to write sci-fi narratives, and kind of thinking, as well as aliens just chilling out, which does happen quite a lot in the book. Like I don't want to say there's no aliens chilling out, because there's quite a lot of aliens just chilling out, which is good sci-fi in my opinion.
It's an interesting way of like navigating even away from the blob shape to an even more like distant way that you can explore, maybe even just like a lot of regular mundane concepts, but even at a more like distilled version, right?
Yeah.
One question I want to ask is, and it's great that you brought up the aliens, is do you have any sort of highlights or things that you want to talk about that maybe, you know, folks for the first time hearing about you, or things that you're like really excited that you're doing or going to be doing, that you want to share with people?
Yeah, I feel like at the moment, yeah, alien comics, really excited about them. I think it's going to be a really fun, it's sort of, I feel like I've been drawing aliens for like the last few years in my work, and like they've been, I guess, recurring characters in comics as like little gray alien people. And I feel like I'm now sort of starting to like figure out like what stories look like with them, and with different people in like that kind of spaceship setting. And yeah, I feel like that ties in as well to a lot of the paintings I'm making at the moment, which some are alien themed, not all of them, but like a few aliens kicking around. But yeah, like doing multimedia work and thinking about working in like a bigger and more three-dimensional way has been so cool. It's been really like, I feel like I am a person who really likes having multiple things to work on at once. So, you know, I'll do like an evening of doing comics, and then I'll like do an evening of painting, or like working on something a little bit more like physical and less sort of 2D. And so yeah, I enjoy having like a few different things on at the same time, but also they all feel like they are all in tandem with each other. Like I feel like all parts of my art and like what I'm doing, it's like a whole, even though they are all different mediums and stuff. I think that they all exist together. So yeah, but yeah, I feel like that's what I'm most hyped on at the moment is making small comics. And yeah, even though it's been weird being inside, it definitely has helped me work on a little bit of comics and like kind of get focused on that, which has been don't want to be like, oh, it's a great thing, because obviously it's terrible, a terrible situation, but it is like one, something that is good personally that's come out of it.
Taking those like silver linings in an
Yeah,
instance, right?
yeah, exactly. It is a weird thing because I'm like, well, I like to think of positives, but it is very strange when it's a global catastrophe that everyone's sort of having to try and deal with in their own way. It's like, and I think I'm very lucky in lots of ways. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's almost, it's like you're taking that same softness that you have for the characters and also including that for yourself, right? It's
Yeah,
like
for sure. Yeah,
allowing
yeah,
yourself
definitely.
the little moments of,
Yeah, I'm allowed to feel okay.
yeah. Well, I thank you so much for spending this time with me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah,
It's
this has been great. I guess that's everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. And yeah, it's been lovely to talk to you.
You too. Cheers.
Yeah. Bye-bye.